Alright, hear me out. This is not a video game. It's not CG or AI. It's all real, shot in camera, with real people on real sets. Crazy, right? I don't know if you've seen it yet, but a few months ago, the crypto company Coinbase wanted to make a commercial for the Oscars that showed what it looked like for a man to break free from the simulated world of a video game. So they asked film director Oscar Hudson to be the one to bring it to life. And he did. But he did it in his way.
1 second, we'll just check that.
Almost every facet of the world we were building was taking detail and printing it flat and putting it back onto surfaces. The suits that these people wear, they're not being made by tailors, they're being made by video game designers. It's all two-dimensional. It's basically a miniature set, and you can see that. The arrow is just 4 bits of yellow perspex glued together. That's all it is. How do you do a shot that starts 10 meters in the air, moves in a locked-off isometric fashion, and then gradually evolves into something so much more handheld and tactile and human?
So much effort, so much craft, so much humanity. My main question though is, why didn't you guys just do the easier thing and use CG to animate this?
Well, that wouldn't have been a lot of fun now, would it?
Here we go again.
Move it, slowpoke.
Get out the way.
Honey, watch it, good swing. Honey, thanks for the change. Welcome, player 3984. Would you like to get in line?
Yes.
What's the matter with you?
Whether I'm right
Where are you going?
or whether I'm wrong,
Wrong way. What's the matter?
whether I find a place in this world or never belong, I gotta be me. I gotta be me.
Player 3984, your recent behavior is totally unacceptable and out of line with what we represent here at this company.
What else can I be but what I am? I'll go it alone, that's how it must be. I can't be right for somebody else if I'm not right for me. I gotta be free, I just gotta be free. Daring to try to do it or die. I gotta be me.
So I think the big question here, at least for me, is why didn't you guys just do the easier thing and use CG to animate this?
Well, that wouldn't have been a lot of fun now, would it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think given that the idea of the script was that it was about a man breaking free of a video game, and given the way I like to do things, which is you know, I love practical effects, I love in-camera magic, and I love creating worlds. It felt to me like immediately obvious that the right approach with this was to make a video game in real life. That was the only way I could see that we were going to be able to blend from one reality to another reality. Like, I think if we'd started out in a real CG environment, I don't know how you slide the slider from CG to real, but I do know how you slide the slider from real pretending to be CG to real.
Yeah.
So it was really that. It was about trying to lay the groundwork for creating that shift. But you know, that's the sort of more kind of boring practical reasoning. But the maybe the better, more kind of story driven reasoning is that, we were trying to find a way to make sure that the character had humanity right from the beginning, even when they were trapped inside the video game. And and I think that's in there. I think that there's this human quality that's kind of hiding within the slightly uncanny fake game world.
Yeah, to me that is the most beautiful thing, is this transition moment. Because honestly, the first time I saw it, I thought, okay, this is a CG film that goes from CG to real life. But it wasn't until I saw a lot of the behind the scenes footage that I realized that you guys actually just shot the whole darn thing in real life, which I think is incredibly beautiful. I know a lot of effort went into that. What were some of the conversations you had with your department heads, or with anyone really, when it comes to how do we take this thing that's so recognizable to people and deliver it in a way that really kind of hasn't been done yet?
Yeah, well, it was a really vast collaborative effort trying to figure all this stuff out, figure out how you do build a game world in real life. It's not something that there's a roadmap for. So it took experimentation and R&D and a pretty thorough process of trial and error. All that being said, on a commercial timeline, which is not a very generous one. So really, like, as soon as the ball was rolling on the job, we got into doing materials tests in London. So we shot in Cape Town actually, but before we went, a lot of my team were based here. So we very quickly set up a materials test where Luke Moran Morris, who's my production designer, built 3 or 4 different little sort of basic sets, or with quite different sort of textural approaches. That being, scenic, which means like painted. Then various other ones that were a lot more to do with printing. So like printing out textures that had been intentionally made low res or pixelated or something like this. And yeah, so we made these little flats, and into that we put our man in some very, very early kind of like prototype costumes, and just to see what we would see and to see how it would feel. And same goes for the masks. I mean, I think at a very early point, I had the idea that maybe this kind of printed approach might be a good one, and it seemed like a promising approach, because I think the whole the sort of like underlying principle behind almost every facet of the world we were building was taking detail and printing it flat and putting it back onto surfaces, and sort of taking the complexity and depth and detailing that exists within a surface, be it a face or a sign or a shop window, and just printing that flat 2-dimensionally onto a surface, whilst down-resing it a little bit too. Like that's fundamentally how everything in the world works. But that early materials test was really key, I think, not just to learn practically what we were going to need to do, but also just to bring people along with us, because we would, by which I mean, agency, client, everybody on the job, like, we're doing something pretty strange. And I think it was really important that everybody had a sense of what we were doing and where we were going, because yeah, it definitely was a little bit of a leap into unknown territory, getting this thing going. So It was great to be able to just show off some tests and say, hey, look, this is going to work, isn't it?
The main character, I felt for the man, What were some things you guys did to help make that character stand out amongst this NPC world?
Well, the first thing we did was we put him bang smack in the middle of frame for most of the film. And he's got the arrow over his head. He's there. Everyone calls him an NPC, but he's kind of the one person in the film who's not an NPC. He's the one who's being controlled by the system. Maybe it's a subtle distinction, but it's a distinction of sorts. And what did we do? I mean, I worked with, I did a lot of research into games and game movement, and worked with brilliant choreographer Maeva Berthelot to craft a kind of movement for the character that had humanity, but that also I felt depressive, that felt sort of reminiscent of games, but without being a total rip of any one game in particular. And we tried to create a kind of whole lexicon of motion for the character, so that he was able to, move in the right way. And also, I guess, want to mention Arthur, who plays the lead character, is a brilliant physical theatre performer from a school called Jacques Lecoq in Paris, which is a place I like to cast from quite a lot. They kind of make these like art clowns, basically, and I always think that that physical theatre performers have a different quality of not just movement but of character. It's a very, very different sensibility to say like a more traditional like dancer that you may cast for a movement-led role. And I just find you get really, really characterful, wonderful people coming out of that school of theatre. And yeah, he's just extremely charismatic and looks great even when he's got a sort of strange version of his own face stretched over his own face.
Okay, while we're talking about choreography, I mean, this kind of movement, I feel like, is popular right now. It's like a dance of its own. You know, did you just go and like help, like go find the people that were already into that?
Yeah, well, obviously we did our research. We looked online and we could see, it is its own little sort of internet genre of people pretending to be NPCs and that kind of thing. So yeah, of course, that kind of stuff provides some kind of reference and resource for I don't know, starting points. But yeah, as I said, we tried to make a movement that wasn't entirely kind of like off the bottle, like we wanted to make something that had its own character and felt a little bit different. But yeah, needless to say, impersonating video games is like, it's a thing. People do it. And I think in a way it was kind of part of the appeal was like, yeah, let's try and do the best version of that I've ever seen, like let's go really hard and impersonate a video game all the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there a particular video game that you guys channeled directly?
I would say the video game that provided most inspiration and reference for us was, it's a game called The Getaway. It's basically a kind of like post-GTA. It's a GTA style game, but it's set in London. It's kind of grey and depressive. It functions much like GTA does, except it's kind of a bit more cinematic in its weird way because there's no text over, there's no sort of UI overlays or anything like that. And yeah, there's a lot of driving, but the world of the game is so texturally interesting, and I think it provided us reference point for a few different things within the film that we made, specifically like the way that the color functioned, because it's kind of a depressing, downbeat feeling world. It's London after all, so they've gone hard on the desaturated stuff. But, but what we actually really liked about it is that, and what you can see in our film as well, is that actually, despite it being a kind of grey, depressing world, it's actually oddly colourful. It's kind of like the greys of the concrete aren't pure greys. We've got sort of purples and oranges and reds and all of these funny kind of off tones that actually we found, and it was another thing that came out of our testing, was that this degree of colour just again, it fed into that slightly unreal feeling, like everything that's in the screen is obviously it's a facsimile of something from real life, and so it's been made by digital hands, and those digital hands impart like flaws and get things a bit wrong and get the settings a bit wrong on them sometimes, and so things like scale go out of whack, color, saturation, all of this stuff lands a bit wrong. When it comes to the wardrobe as well, like the suits that these people wear, they're not being made by tailors, they're being made by video game designers, and those video game designers don't actually really know the proportions of a suit, and so you end up having things being a bit wrong and out of scale. And that was something that we intentionally tried to do to the jackets, and put the shoulders in the wrong place and make the seams sit a bit funny and all of that kind of thing. That was something with my costume designer, Amina Kara Calendar. She did a great job here. And where we couldn't do it for everybody, but we were printing out these suits two-dimensionally. So all of the detailing that you see there on the face of the suit, like the lapels, the buttons, the tie, it's all two-dimensional. So it's printed flat and tailored. So they're effectively wearing smocks with very little relief in the face of the jacket at all. And all of that just adds to the kind of like uncanny flat thing that's going on throughout. So Yeah, if there you go. If you're looking at this, the shirt layer is different from the suit layer, but everything else on that is just a 2-dimensional print.
Wow. Yeah, I wouldn't have known that at all looking at it.
On some level you do, I think, though, because it feels off and you can't exactly put your finger on why. And I think it's those subtle details of offness that give you that. That's what the uncanny is. It's when something's like sitting in that zone between, well, human and non-human, or in this case, sort of like right and wrong when it comes to suit tailoring. But just the way that the lapels sit with the shoulders there, that's the lapel is. It's all wrong. It's completely wrong.
It is for sure.
And, even without thinking about it, you pick up on those kind of things.
Yeah. I want to talk about specifically this shot, because this point of view, this isometric angle here, is just so indicative of what video games feel like, this objective point of view here. How did you guys, I know you're not the DP, I know you're not the camera operator, but to the best of your ability, tell me about how you guys actually pulled this shot off and out followed our main character perfectly. Yeah,
well, it was a combination of things. I guess firstly, for starters, just to touch on the isometric angle, because that was an early decision that I made, and to use that kind of video game language rather than the sort of like following behind GTA style video game language, because
right.
I felt like you talk about all of those online video game impersonators and stuff, and I felt like the quote unquote GTA angle, that's the one that I see a lot of online, whereas this one feels that little bit harder to execute in a certain way, and that little bit more kind of heightened and a bit more, it felt like a more interesting, novel kind of way of capturing our game. And so I was really keen to do this angle. That's first thing to say. And then secondly, it was like really, really surprising how difficult it was to achieve these shots. I think all of us just massively underestimated how hard it would be to track a character's movements from, the camera position here is sort of nine-ish meters in the air at full running pace. There's a million grip solutions that might come to mind of how you do this, but all of them have really difficult technical limitations. And for that first street that he goes up and down at the beginning of the spot, what we ended up doing was putting a giraffe crane on the back of a flatbed truck, basically. And so the camera is tracking by being driven, basically. It's a precision driver who's, rehearsed and knows the emotions as best as possible and does his best to track the character and stop and start along with him. And then there's a little bit of post stabilizing going on, but not a huge amount. There's a little bit of post stabilizing going on after the fact as well. That was a surprising challenge, just in terms of like how we were going to go about doing it, because there's all kinds of other solutions which you could think of. You'd ask why you don't use a drone, but drones are. I'm not a big fan of drones, to be honest. They never perform like how you want them to, and even just really? for the simple fact of like how do you dress a set? Like, do you want to be flying your drone up for 2 minutes to try and dress things to camera every single time you want to have a look at your shot? Like, that winds me up no end. So I'm really not a big fan of using drones for something like this, but.
That makes sense, because how many different elements went into building this specific world? Everything in it. When you get your shot up, it would be crazy to have a drone up there and need to fly it up there every time just to see the shot. Makes sense.
And also, like, obviously everything, all the elements are in camera, but there are passes done here, effects passes. In terms of some of the action and some of the cleanup and the coins that fall out of his pocket, the people walking down the street are not all from the same exact pass.
Got it.
So there is a conflating effect element to the shot too. So
no, hang on. I want to stick on that for a second, because I imagine you would need something very specific like motion control if you were going to layer different passes. But you didn't say you didn't need that. A truck was precise enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's precise enough. That's the way of putting it. Yeah, like it's we effectively did motion control just because we were driving the same line, and then any imperfection in that becomes VFX's challenge or problem or whatever you want to say. But it was repeatable enough, and because there's no panning or tilting or parallax being created in the shot, it all stays relatively doable from a compositing perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it must be. I can't be right for somebody else if I'm not right for me. I gotta be free.
While we're talking about this kind of point of view, this kind of setup, this room that you're shooting in, this reality transition shot that I think is probably the most iconic, the biggest part of the piece, I can imagine how many things went into it. I just want to hear how you guys did it, all the nitty gritty. Let's jump in.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a shot that we called the reality run, and the idea of it is that it begins in the isometric kind of game worldview that we've established early on and slowly sinks down and zooms in and becomes handheld kind of as our character sprints down the street, and the world around him kind of gradually becomes more and more human and textured and tactile and messy, and
So cool.
there's sparks and smoke and all kinds of things that don't belong in game world. So yeah, that was, I think from the start, this was really, yeah, in my mind was kind of the centerpiece shot from the very beginning. And I mean, I hoped it would feel that way. And I think it does. It was a really difficult shot really difficult shot to achieve. Again, the grip was the big challenge. It was like, how do you do a shot that starts 10 meters in the air, moves in a locked off isometric fashion, and then gradually evolves into something so much more handheld and tactile and human, all in one continuous motion. You know, we talked about everything, you know, and nothing really made sense. The thing I actually wanted to do was to build a giant, a huge ramp, and then just operate off the side of a vehicle.
Sure.
Basically build a roller coaster and do it like that. I mean, the central challenge is how you incorporate handheld camera language into this kind of thing. Whilst going at full running speed, starting that high in the air and coming down to the floor. And also, I might chuck in starting quickly and stopping quickly, because, you know, we built this 75 meter set almost wall to wall in the studio, so there's not a lot of starting space and stopping time. So any kind of massive vehicle you can almost rule it out from the start, because you're going to be smashing into the wall at the end of the studio. So so a lot of challenges with this, but we ended up going with this wire cam rig, which you can see here is a bit of a beast in itself. But it was a kind of, you know, these wire cams, normally you see them with a kind of like stabilized head. You know, you don't have an operator up there, but obviously with the handheld thing we wanted to do, we needed that. So yeah, no, we tested it, and ultimately the challenge became like, how do we maximize the height that it can start at? Because with all of that gubbins hanging down, you end up losing so many meters of height at the start of the studio, and it was a challenge to get ourselves high enough to get the angle that we needed for the start of the shot. But really, it's just time and prep and research and trial and error, and you know, the guys who built this rig did a great job, and it really does takes days of just trying to figure out how to get this thing moving smoothly and not wobbling too much, and all of this. And then maybe actually as well, like a word on the ending of the shot, because I mean, obviously the ending here, you see him run into this like covered kind of flower market sort of area.
Yeah, I gotta know what's the exact transition here where that happens, because this is 2 shots, right? And
you can find it if you want. If you step through,
let's do it.
Probably can find it. I think you just it works really well. There you go. That was it.
Yeah. Oh, right there.
Yeah. And interestingly, and this is slightly skipping ahead, but interestingly, we found that the transition actually worked better. Like the assumption is that you're going to do it on a column, like a classic kind of wipe cut transition. But actually, we found it worked better when you did it on his face, within like moving on his body actions, cutting on his body actions within all of the like chaos of the, you know, the dirty foreground whipping through.
Yeah.
You put the cut there rather than on the column, and it was a lot more forgiving. The whole thing kind of just melded together.
Yeah.
But what I'll say here is that this transition was like, it was a bit of a triumph of good scouting, because, you know, we wanted him to be able to run out into a more kind of open location. There's my production designer, Luke, doing the power walk. But yeah, we wanted to find somewhere that kind of like opened out into this bigger kind of more open feeling city environment. And we found this spot that had these columns and this kind of covered area. And as a result of finding this and liking this, we sort of reverse engineered our set build to match it exactly. So we built the columns and the roof. That wasn't in the original design. Nothing like that was. And all of that was kind of, reverse engineered into the back of the set to create that really cohesive, like not just cohesive, but identical environment.
I mean, how much, are we talking about a month of your life here? A month of everyone's life here with this project?
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
But that's normal. Anytime, like any commercial of, I mean, not even of this scale, like any commercial, any project you're doing it's at least a month of your life. But this was on the ground, 3 weeks in South Africa and a solid 2 or 3 of pretty hard prep in London as well. We worked fast. I mean, we were shooting this last month, honestly. We shot this was shot in February.
Wow, dude.
I got back from South Africa like 2.5 weeks ago.
Wow, yeah, you guys ran fast on this one. How much was done in prep? How much prep are we talking? And what was the team like? The people actually building sets like this and getting the thing to a place in which you can show up to shoot it with the camera?
It was a 3-week set build. 3-week set build, which was, what's that expression? You're building the plane as you're flying it or something?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
We had to embark upon the set build, like, because of the deadlines. We'd started building the thing before we'd had signed off designs. You know, we were sort of approving things in broad strokes, and you know, first you approve the scale of the thing, and then you approve the kind of rough shape, and then you approve the surface finishing, and it's just the nature. I mean, commercials are always like this because you have this layer of client and agency and director and the team. It sort of has this kind of like layers of approvals thing that you know, definitely make things that little bit harder in terms of moving forwards. But it's just part of the game, isn't it?
The way this thing ends is really miraculous. I mean, it's the absolute opposite of where we start, right? Things are very colorful, handheld. The shots are very handheld. People are smiling, and the excitement is there. What were some of the shots that you were really intentional with to help create this?
Well, the idea of this sort of montage sequence is that, you know, I guess at the start of the process, I got quite analytical about what it is that defines like video game language and video game storytelling, and how that's differentiated from I suppose you'd just say cinematic or like film language storytelling, which in this film is kind of like reality, I guess. So rather than game reality, but
Right.
you know, and if a video game world is defined by a fixed isometric view that follows a central character, pretty direct forms of A to B to C to D kind of cause and effect continuity. Different scenes are levels. You go in, you're introduced to a level. The way people communicate is in a very specific way. You don't have close-ups. You don't have cutaways. You don't have anything like that.
Right.
That's not part of video game language. And I was really keen to try and make sure that that all the things we were doing within the video game side of the film were really true to video game kinds of storytelling, you know. And then on the sort of conversely, for this section really kind of comes to stand as the kind of like cutting loose from the video game world and accessing some other kind of reality. And yeah, so we have close-ups, we have handheld cameras, we have soft focus, textures, colors, things that don't make sense, like abstract feelings that kind of stand to like represent an emotion rather than a kind of direct like action-based logic.
Yeah.
And that's really what all of that stuff is. It's trying to speak to the kind of the blending of these two worlds and the two things kind of melting and pulling apart, but also like trying to tap into a different kind of visual storytelling that evokes reality, or you know, narrative reality as opposed to like video game reality.
Yeah. I love this shot. Let's break it down a little bit. What did you guys do? Yeah. I mean, just let's dive into it. I love it.
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting shot, this one, because this shot wasn't in the very original script that I kind of, you know, got approved with the agency, and it came out of like conversations about I don't know, like trying to expand the universe and trying to find some more environments to live in. And you know, funny things happen sometimes in productions where, you know, because we have a lot of miniatures in this film, so
right.
we had 4 miniature environments built to kind of achieve this goal of expanding the world and creating these bigger spaces for him to move through, where we obviously can't build an entire plaza, so we build it in miniature and composite him into the plaza. There's a sequence of 3 shots in the middle of the film that are done like that. But then this boardroom shot is the kind of funny anomaly in that it's basically a miniature set, and you can see that we all of the actors are full scale and the table's full scale, and you know, you can see here in this little BTS clip that you can see exactly what's full scale, but the whole room around it is a miniature. And I was quite excited to do this funny combination of like miniature environment with full scale actors. You know, it's not something I've done before. I've worked with miniatures a lot. I love miniatures. It's like something I always find myself doing miniatures. But I've never done this before, and it worked really well. I was really pleased with the result. Like kind of amazed how cohesive it feels actually. But again, it kind of felt like this script, more than maybe like a quote unquote normal film, kind of allowed us to do that whole thing, to do that anyway, to show the seams a little bit. Like if you look in the corner, so those are printed windows. That's just a 2-dimensional skyline that's just printed and put on a window. But like at the bottom of that wall there, you can actually see the seam. Like that's just a sort of a bad edge of the
I didn't even notice that.
I love stuff like that. You wouldn't. It's like, it's a tiny thing, but I just love that there's these weird details, these kind of little bit of scrappiness in the set that just gives it that like off quality. You know, I think imperfection is a really underrated part of any process. It's what brings like humanity to a thing. You know, a lot of people are talking, you know, I'm seeing people with this film seeing it as a kind of fuck you to AI because it's like so aggressively handmade. It's like if AI is is making our reality. This is like the humans making computer reality. It's like turning the tables on them and saying, see, look what we can do. And so,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, it would be disingenuous to frame it as if it was like an intention of the project, but
Sure.
but it's satisfying. I think it's nice to make something that makes people like feel some optimism about the place for human creativity in a landscape where like AI is making everyone feel depressed about all of that. So that's cool.
Yeah, 100% it's cool. I think it's really cool to turn the tables in this way because we're using all these tools and some AI, some not, some VFX, computer generated. We have from the beginning of this craft, I think, to try and use those tools to make things look more real. And for you to take all of the practical classic tools of cinema and image making and try and make it look computer generated is just completely fascinating to me. And you've pulled it off so well here.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think there's always something. I think there's always been something really interesting at the place at which digital and analog technologies meet, and the crossover point I think is a really interesting one when it comes to I don't know, just like creative jumping off points for like how you do stuff, having interesting ideas, like doing interesting executions, that kind of stuff. Like I don't like doing anything that should be an analog process digitally or a digital process in an analog way. Like there's fertile ground there, and it's not just doing something like this, which is very literally creating a digital reality in an analog way. But
yeah, it's really cool to see the lengths you guys went to keep it practical. I mean, even the arrow above the guy is something of a practical effect. Talk to me about your guys' pursuit with that.
yeah, I think, as I said, you know, we were doing, this whole thing was coming together on the fly in many ways. Like obviously we planned the hell out of it, but at the same time, you know, things were showing up late in the day. And when it comes to this arrow, this was one of those rare moments where, well, actually, is it rare? This is one of those common moments where the simplest solution is the best solution.
Yeah.
And the arrow is just 4 bits of yellow perspex glued together. That's all it is. And what's amazing about perspex, which you can see in this video here, is that if you it's like a fiber optic cable. If you light down the edge of it, the seams light up. And that's all it is. We just put 3 little LED arrows on the corner of some perspex, and it's created this like cool 3-dimensional shape. And yeah, like we had a couple of these on set, and in moments, you know, we are definitely using like a CG one at various points, especially when it's like flying down the street after him. That's not real, but
right.
But it's like in the bank queue here, it's puppeteered. This is just it's being puppeteered by a guy with the arrow on a stick there. And at any point where it's interacting, smashing out of the glass or hitting the floor or anything like that, we always tried to use the real one to get that kind of like real physical. To get that dynamic cool out of it, you know. But it's amazing how good it looks, just in reality.
You've got a great cinematographer on this. It's funny because like the cinematography is obviously very important. What were some of those conversations that you and Ben had going into this?
Well, I often think I'm a bit of a tough date for cinematographers because a lot of the ideas that I like are quite prescriptive and quite like quite rigid and quite sort of like there's not a lot of like fun to be had with the lighting. I mean, the project's fun as hell, but like the answer is that we lit everything really flat and really shadow free, and that is not a super fun assignment for a cinematographer. Obviously, the scale here introduced its own kind of absurd challenges, like lighting. We had an absolutely ginormous softbox running over basically like 90 to 100 meters of 2 different streets. So we had to get custom. There you go. You can see it there. It's kind of insane. We had to get custom-made silks, 30 by 30 meter silks made for us because they didn't exist, and had to do some clever stuff with our lighting to make sure we didn't spend all our money on just light. But yeah, no, I mean, Ben did a fantastic job here. It's an incredibly, like, from one perspective, like, we've massively underused him because he's an incredibly talented cinematographer. He can make absolutely, like, stunning.
He is. Oh yeah.
Beautiful imagery. And that wasn't, like, in a funny way, that wasn't really the brief here. It wasn't really about creating beautiful imagery. It was about creating something that felt like a video game. And so he often was having to kind of like bite his tongue and go against his own instincts to like not make it too beautiful in a way. But like, as I said, it wasn't the point. We weren't trying to make something beautiful. So you're fulfilling a brief. You're like serving a purpose here. But nonetheless, there's still a ton of like really interesting technical challenges to get around. Not least like how we're moving the camera through these sets. Like Ben is a really, really talented like rock climber as well. So he was a great person to be sending up in a kind of zip wire rig and like wrestling the camera as he's whipping down the street at 20 miles an hour. And he was also like, we were up in the cherry picker a lot, like framing up 10 meters in the air. You know, it was quite a sort of like all action sort of grip solutions kind of job. But yeah, I guess like that. And we did some weird experimental stuff too. Like we were waggling the Phantom camera around over like oil and water. That was, no one really knew what the hell was going on with that show. I actually had, there's a local director called Roy Ringdahl, who's great local young director. And I called him up and was like, yo, I have absolutely no idea how to do this, but like if I give you like 3 days, can you figure out how to make oil and water look cool? And he took up the challenge and figured it all out for us. So that's how we have these nice shots in the movie.
That's so cool, man. How many days of shooting?
5 days, 4 in the studio and 3.5 in the studio and 1.5 on location.
Yeah. Once you get it all shot, talk to me about your feelings afterwards and what the process was immediately after. You said it came out quick after shooting.
Yeah. Well, the edit on this was ridiculously quick because, you know, with this aired during the Oscars, and so we only had I think 2.5 weeks or something maybe to turn the whole thing around.
Wow. And
that's including post. So the edit was about 5 days long. And Leo Scott, who cut it, who's a brilliant editor, came out to South Africa and was working from set with his assistant Bo. And they made good headway on kind of like building the thing out as we were shooting. And then the very next day after the shoot, I was in the hotel room with Leo and Bo cutting the thing. And we spent, I think, 2 or maybe 3 days in Cape Town cutting. Then we flew back to London and had 2 or 3 more days in London getting it done. And the agency were kind of across that in a remote sort of way. Like what's something that's kind of interesting for me is, you know, I'm British and come from the British system and you know, in the UK and US you have very different relationship with the edit when it comes to advertising. Like in the US, normally the director's not involved with the edit at all, and whereas in the UK they typically are. And this is a US job, even though the creatives are actually British themselves. But they were very, I don't know if gracious is quite the right word, but they were very kind, and they let me basically they let me do the edit alongside them, and they gave me, even though we only had a few days, they gave me a couple of days with the edit to kind of whip it into shape, and then I stuck around through the whole process, basically just like being across it with them, which is very unusual for the US system, that they would be happy for me to do that. But I do think it's a bit mad that the director gets kicked out of the room typically at this point. It's like, you know, you've let us make the film this far, let us finish it. But they did, and I think that was great of them, and I think it's testament to them to be able to see that that's the right thing to do, and for something like this that's moving so fast as well, I think it's really helpful.
Yeah. I feel like projects of this scale, projects this darn cool, have impacts on people's careers, especially maybe yours. Is that true? Where do you go from here?
I don't know, man. It only came out a couple of days ago. But yeah, look, I don't know. I'm sure I'm going to get sent more adverts off the back of it. But I'm not someone I'm not the kind of director who's going to be doing job to job, especially in the commercial realm. Like, I'm very, very grateful that I get to do these amazing large-scale commercial projects, and for all that allows me. But it's not the thing that I want to build my career around. I've just made my first feature film that's coming out later this year, and that was a fantastic experience, and that's something that I hope to do more of. But if you want to do that, you have to write, and writing takes a lot of time. And so for me, it's all about protecting time and balancing these two sides of my career. And it's lovely that people want me to make them great spots, and I'm all for it. But the reality is that you don't get scripts like this coming up every day at all. And so patience is really important, and being able to say no is a really, really important skill in this realm. I think there's always temptation, especially when there's money involved, but it's really important to be able to say no and to say yes to the right things when they come along.
Yeah. Is this the best commercial you could have ever been asked to make?
This one it's very me, I have to say. Like, it's a lot of like themes that I really like. And I got to stylistically approach it in a way that feels very true to myself, and it has a technical component and a kind of like world building component. All these are things that like I love to do, and it's probably the most like me commercial I've done, which is really cool. But yeah, and you know what? The other thing that's really unusual about this commercial is that it's not all positive, and like and what I mean by that is that it starts in a world that is allowed to be a bit bad in a way, a bit sort of downcast, and there's conflict in it. Like, you'd be amazed how few advertisers are able to even like confront the idea of like something being negative in their branding, and it's very difficult to create any kind of like narrative conflict or like some kind of story that is exciting when you can't like show anything bad.
That's a really interesting point, dude. Something I hadn't considered.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Anything else about this project? I think we all learn lessons along the way with every project. Was there any big lessons for you that you learned in the process of this?
I don't know. I mean, I think for me, it's a good lesson that like, trust my instincts when I'm seeing these scripts. Honestly, this script came in and it was not really a very good time for me to be doing a job, but I took it anyway because I was like, wow, this is a once in every 2 or 3 years kind of script.
Yeah. And
I really believed it would be pretty good, and it turned out pretty good. And I guess it's just that it's that thing about like trusting your gut about stuff.
Yeah. Well, Oscar, this project is far from conventional, and thank you for answering my questions. I won't be forgetting this one. This one sits with me, and I think it sits with a lot of other filmmakers in the world that we live in, dude. And I just want to thank you for saying yes to it and saying yes to me to talk about it.
Of course. Well, thank you, Dylan. I'm glad you like the movie. Thank you. You call it a movie. It's not a movie, is it? It's a commercial.
That feels like a movie. That's why they ask movie makers to make commercials, right?
Yeah.
Ever wonder how top directors make treatments like these? There's a few ways, but an important one is showing the right reference images. And I don't mean what you can search for in a web browser or screen capture on your phone. Finding those absolutely perfect reference images, in my opinion, is made easiest with FrameSet. Skip the painful, messy, time-consuming search process. They've got tools for that. It will cost you nothing to get started, so try it out.